All right, let me welcome everyone this afternoon. This is an Orr Group webinar. Thank you very much for joining. Our guest today is Michael P. Galvin, a terrific individual and leader in our industry. So we're very lucky to have you here, Michael. Thank you for giving us some of your time.
No, I'm humbled to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it will really be a very interesting discussion, and we thank you so much for joining. I wanted to try to get as much from you as I can. You're a good friend of mine, so I'll be easy on you, my man. But I know you have.
That'll be a first. That'll be a first.
You do have an incredible history, both family, personal. Your philanthropic journey is rich. I think we're going to learn a lot from you today. So I do want to, though, touch, if I may, first on your family's history with this great company called Motorola. And what I thought I would do is keep it pretty light, but I did want to say I understand from spending a lot of time with you, the importance Motorola has had on so many of the current innovations that we just consider part of life, these days. And I also know that your grandfather founded the company, but your dad, you've talked about your dad a lot, and he's just seemed like such a great guy and such an amazing innovator, entrepreneur, inventor, all that stuff. So if we can just start today by talk about your dad a little bit, talk about, what you saw in him.
Well, I also want to say hello to my mother, because I hope she's watching.
Good.
And I don't get in too much trouble with her. But yeah, I was, privileged to grow up in a family that, had extraordinary success in innovation. And, it all started with, my grandfather, who was not a college graduate, but, a real entrepreneur, failing 5 times in business before to earn his MBA in the School of Hard Knocks. Before he started his first successful business, which was making auto parts for Detroit automakers. And he went to get his orders one year, and they said, "We're not going to be buying your part anymore because you're going to be obsoleted. We've changed the engine design, and we love you, but we just don't need your product anymore. So what do you need?" And they said, "Well, if you can get one of those radios that everybody's got on their countertop in their kitchen or their living room, with all those glass tubes, to work inside of a car on the move without all those glass tubes, bursting, that we would buy." And so, long story short, he was, the first to commercialize the car radio. Now, the importance of that story is that it taught him that, he had to be constantly renewing and improving himself. And so, the family lore and the company lore is just being dedicated to constant, continuous renewal and improvement. And as a result, for the next 75 years, while my grandfather and then my father, and importantly, my brother, was the chair and CEO of Motorola, Motorola created every 15 years a new industry, not just a new product or a new color or a new sleek design. It went from, car radios, and then of course the competition started hammering them, and they had to find something else new, and that went into they developed the walkie-talkie, where radios could talk to each other, which was very, very helpful in saving President Roosevelt's life in Miami, and also during World War II. And then, of course, that went into commercial two-way radio, and then the first to commercialize cellular. AT&T developed it, but they thought with McKinsey that it'd only be a $150 million industry. It's turned out to be $150 trillion, maybe over time. So anyway, that's the essence of innovation, was always present at the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table.
Well, I think that kind of background and message is so incredibly relevant for the conversation today, because, given where we are with COVID and the civil unrest and such, it's paramount that the nonprofit industry look at ourselves. We look at ourselves the way that your father looked at that business, sort of having to recreate and reinvent and come up with new ideas. So thank you for that. I know the company, is over 90 years old, and it's now split into two, and both of those public companies still as I understand, are headquartered in Chicago, which is where you're from. One final question. Are any of your family members still involved?
No, my brother was the last Galvin to be chair and CEO. He retired in 2004 when we didn't, it wasn't a family-owned company anymore. It was very much publicly owned. And so when we didn't really have anybody involved in the company anymore, we declared victory on 75 years of association with the company and moved on harmoniously and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we moved on to other things. My brother and I founded, a private equity real estate platform called Harrison Street Real Estate Partners, and we founded that, built it, and grew it with our other co-founding general partner and CEO, and we have since monetized out of that in connection with a succession. Unfortunately, there's never a good time for succession, but there is a right time, and when you're approaching 70 years old, this is what you got to do. And so we went on to do other things, my brother and I, and it's been a lot of fun.
Right. So let me track your career real quickly here. You started out, as I understand, as a lawyer, where I believe at Winston and Strawn you met your lovely wife Elizabeth, either there or as a fellow lawyer. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you went on to government for a little while under Bush 1 in the Department of Commerce. That must have been interesting. And then you founded, as you said, Galvin Enterprises in 1992. Your brother joined you later, as I understand, and you guys co-led that one. And then you founded a very successful platform that in my lifetime I've been familiar with called Harrison Street Real Estate. And you just sold that a few years ago to Colliers in 2018. Can you, just so people understand, what that's as I understand, a private equity platform for real estate, all kinds of different types of real estate. Can you just summarize what you guys did there?
Yes, it was back in, I guess, the early 2000s. And, my brother Chris and I had never been in the real estate business before, but we were having to invest money in real estate for nonprofit investment investment funds and endowments, if you will, and for our own family. And it just seemed like all of the other private equity real estate business platforms out there were chasing the same kinds of themes, and in the spirit of innovation and taking people elsewhere and being a contrarian, we said, something that the world needs a real estate fund that only invests in blocking and tackling need-based real estate, such as health, education, and storage. Because people aren't going to stop getting old, sick, going to school, and not wanting to give stuff away. And so we did the first 13 deals on our balance sheet. And when others saw what we were doing, they asked if they could be, included in the investment. And so we rolled all our investments into our first fund, which was a small, smaller fund by comparative standards. But, the new investors got to see 60% of the types of investments, the real, operating underlying real estate at work. And then all of a sudden, the crash occurred in 07, 08, 09, and those asset classes, subclasses in real estate were the top performing in the entire real estate industry. That put us on the map to raise serious funds going forward. By the time we retired, Chris and I, with our co-founding general partner, Chris Merrill, who's an extraordinary executive and partner, we had 6, billion-dollar funds, 2 European funds, and 2 infrastructure core funds. And so, this is important. What we're most proud of, among other things, doing well for our investors, is that we were voted at least four or five times before we left the company and its leadership and general partnership. And I think they're still earning this now, being voted by Pension Investment Magazine as the one of the top private equity cultures to work for, which was extraordinary in terms of attracting and retaining top talent.
That's terrific. So you've had so many leadership positions, and I want to mention Gore Creek Asset Management also, because that's your family office business that I've heard a lot about too, which is a very successful leadership model. And we don't have to go into that, but when I look at your history, your family's history and all that stuff, it just screams leadership. And now let's get into philanthropy because Mike, I've known you for a while in philanthropy now, and the skills and these leadership qualities that you've learned over the course have really done some great work, you know, with people and organizations. So let's just start with, I met you actually, I don't know if it was 20 or 25 years ago at the National Cathedral School in Washington, D.C., where our daughters went, and you were chair of the board there. And I have to say, I was just so impressed. Somebody along the way asked me to get involved with the capital campaign there in a leadership position. And I looked at you and I said, this guy is someone I want to work for and I want to spend my volunteer time with. And that is what motivated me, frankly, to do that. And I guess a question I have about that is, you were having such a good time with that. Was that one of your first leadership positions in charity at NCS?
Well, I don't think it was, you know,
You were chair. I think I failed to mention that you were chair of the board, which was very impactful.
Yes, I would say that, you know, I'd been chair of other activities, other nonprofits, but I'd say that was probably the first most important institutional, you know, over 100-year-old institutional board leadership assignments that I ever had. Yeah.
And high profile, and a lot of us watching, that type of thing. I know you are currently and have been very involved with the Illinois Institute of Technology. You're chair of the board there. I know you are involved with an organization, a leading think tank in Washington called the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS. And recently I've come to know your organization that you're very involved with called the Vail Veterans Program, which is amazing. And I know you're really proud of that one. Do you want to just talk for a second about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a real inspirational one. The Vail Veterans Program was founded by Cheryl Jensen in Vail, Colorado, the Vail, which everybody associates with the Vail ski mountain, but is a year-round resort. And Cheryl had the vision after 9/11 to try to get military injured, mostly amputees, but PTSD and others with various injuries, out of the rehab center at Walter Reed Hospital and our other Veterans Hospital in Houston and San Diego, and get them out on the slopes and the outdoors, summer and winter, in Vail Valley. Importantly, with their families, not just only with other vets, to try to teach them what they can look forward to learning and excelling at individually and collectively with others, i.e. their families. And so that, you know, they can try to help create a new context for a central purpose in their life, not just skiing, but building on that transformational experience, you know, that they can get to a different place in their relationships with their spouse, caregiver, and their children, let alone their friends, that they can actually learn to do things like skiing without legs and that kind of stuff with the technology that's available, and that they can, you know, genuinely set that as a context for repurposing their life. And then after that transformational experience, Cheryl plugs and plays them into other programs like Johnson & Johnson's Path to Success, where they can unpack and repack their lives in the context of the new optimism that she's helped create. And so I pride myself first and foremost being a volunteer. I happen to be a relatively competent skier, so I'm able to assist a certified adaptive ski instructor and you know, be on the slopes for 5 days straight, you know, with one of these vets and their families. And it's just so inspirational. I'm also on the board and I also donate, but my volunteer service is what I value the most.
It is a warm-hearted and a great organization, and thank you for your service. So let's get into now the meat of this discussion, because I know that there are a bunch of folks on this call who are really interested in taking everything they just heard and all your experiences and asking a bunch of questions about how you would apply those experiences and sort of your own methodology to leadership issues. And I think it's really unique that we have someone today who, like you know, that has such vast experience, both in business and in philanthropy. And I think you are spending a good chunk of your time now on philanthropy, and I can see the impact. So I think it's really important. I'd also want to start just because of, you know, the importance of what we're experiencing right now in our cities. I do want to ask you a question that is relevant to the civil unrest and issues of injustice and inequality and so forth. As a nonprofit leader, as many people on this call are, do you have advice, Mike, for the type of issues and sensitivity and maybe actions that those of us who run charitable organizations should be taking right now?
I can speak to this issue from a governance standpoint. I don't profess to be, an expert at all of the other aspects of it, but I think from a governance standpoint, which is what we're talking about here, I think it's really important when an institution, in particular a nonprofit institution, gets into this kind of a controversy. We're not involved in it either at the Illinois Institute of Technology, but when these kinds of incidents happen and impact your community individually, or indirectly or directly, the first and foremost role of the board chair is to support the CEO or the executive director. It is not to go out and start freelancing on these kinds of issues independently. And importantly, to get all of the other trustees to understand that they too are not supposed to be out there freelancing on these issues on behalf of the institution. This is why the CEO and the executive director work at this full time and earn the big bucks. And so this doesn't mean that they're going to do everything perfectly, and they may not make a mistake or trip along the way. It's to be expected. These things move and change very rapidly. But that's what I think is the appropriate role for the board, no matter how messy it gets. Now, if the CEO or executive director is overwhelmed or really, really making a lot of mistakes in a very difficult situation, then I think the board chair has to make a decision in consultation with that CEO, whether to get involved, whether to involve other, consultants or other outside authorities that can kind of help get a control of the situation. So I think from a governance standpoint, it's really important that the CEO and the chair are aligned and the CEO is allowed to do his or her job. Secondly, it's very important, as the president of Illinois Tech did, Alan Cram, who's a very gifted, university president, got out front with our community, appropriately so, to remind them of what our values are in the context of the issues of racism that were at the core of a lot of what's going on out there. And because our history at Illinois Tech, we were founded, as I said earlier before, to provide, when other universities were not, the underrepresented of all backgrounds, faiths, gender, whatever, a seat at the table of innovation to learn the specialty skills needed back at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And so, this whole concept of diversity and tolerance and support for the underrepresented, that's baked into our DNA over a century. And so it was appropriate for Alan to get out front and to remind everybody for what we stand. And so on those two issues, reminding everybody where our values in the context of the controversy and supporting your president is what I would recommend to everybody are the most important things for nonprofit leadership in these kinds of situations.
That's great advice. And I know IIT, the university you're talking about, really has stood for that, all that, as you've indicated, for all those many decades. So thanks. A lot of us spend an enormous amount of time thinking about how we can recruit business executives to our boards of directors at nonprofits. And usually it's a great experience, but I would like to ask you, someone who spent all that time in the for-profit world and now a lot of time in the nonprofit world, how do you think the skills that you developed in that for-profit space translate to the nonprofit space?
Well, I think obviously, if you're going to lead any organization, for-profit or nonprofit, you have to have dedicated a portion of your life, to trying to study and to take on roles in order to gain the experience on the job. And so I think that, at the core, you have to come into to leadership positions at nonprofits, having, done the early grunt work on, some of these nonprofits, being just a volunteer, not just a donor, and then maybe, getting active in, some subsidiary community, work within the community, and then maybe a board position, and then, serving on a committee, and then maybe chairing the committee. I think all those kinds of experiences really help position one, for leadership, whether it's for profit or nonprofit. But I think, at the essence, if you're in a leadership position, the central organizing principle that kind of is my compass is, where am I going to make a legacy contribution? My father, Bob Galvin, said, wherever you go, try to make a legacy contribution. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, try to do something in your committee, or if you're the leader of the whole institution, instituting either, process improvements, programs, an improvement in the organization that will remain as a legacy contribution that others will follow and advance after you leave. And so if you're always looking to make that legacy contribution, you're always going to be thinking about continuous renewal and improvement, and that will lead you to, wonderful opportunities to help take an organization of which you are a part, which is just fine, but operating kind of ordinarily and making it extraordinary. And how fun is that?
That's fun. Do you have rules that you apply to yourself and to others as to sort of minimal or maximal things that you need to do to be a respected board member of a nonprofit? And I'm thinking now about, sort of time and treasure commitments.
Yeah, I think, the most important rule is to lead by example. Not to be the person with your name, on the letterhead or the invitation, but, somebody who does windows and floors with everybody else, if you know what I mean. And that you really make sure that you have time, to provide the service that the institution expects. And I remember when I was humbled to have been asked to step up and take a turn as the chair of the board of the Illinois Institute of Technology, Illinois Tech. They asked me in the spring, at the time that we were confidentially, organizing this orderly collegial succession in our real estate business. And that was scheduled to close in July. And if it closed, I'd have, 30% of my time available. If it didn't close, I'd be having to work that 30% of the time still for, that business. So I said, just give me until the summer to figure out whether or not I could do this. And then, because I didn't want to take the job if I didn't really feel like I had the time, and I knew that a university was going to take a lot of time if you're the chair. I'm not running the organization, don't pretend to, but it just takes time. And then, I also made sure that I had an excellent understanding with the president with whom I was going to have to most directly work. And it was really important to me to know that Alan Cram, who's the current president, great friend, and a very able executive, was open-minded to trying new things. Because I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew we were going to try something new, again, to try to find that opportunity for a legacy contribution. And so I think it's really important that, that you really assess whether you've got the time to fulfill the public service or the nonprofit service. That's key. And to make sure that you've got an understanding with the senior leadership with respect to kind of how you're both going to take the organization elsewhere if you can.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a legacy impact. That's a great way to sort of focus on what am I truly going to leave behind with this organization. It's an idea I hadn't really heard before, and I think it's a really exceptional way to think about it. Another big area for board leadership, and again, I'll go back to, National Cathedral School. I saw you as a motivator. I saw you as someone who those of us who were involved with the organization could follow. So you did. You mentioned, leading by example. I think you led by example. I mean, first, you're a nice guy, so that's part of it. But you're bringing things to the table and ideas and suggesting things that end up motivating people to go beyond, what they would normally offer, either in advice or contacts or money or any of those things. So I see you as really accomplished on that front. So how do you approach, you're in a bunch of leadership positions, and I know there are a lot of people on the call who are probably disappointed with their leaders in that they aren't motivating the rest of the board to, be as engaged perhaps as you are. So what tools do you use? What do you suggest as, techniques?
Well, I think first and foremost, a component of leadership in the nonprofit space that is distinctive from, let's say, the for-profit space is authenticity. If you, as a leader of the institution, do not identify and are authentic in your identification with the purpose, the underlying purpose and projection of that institution, it's going to be very, very hard for you to lead. In a for-profit business, if you're kind of a jerk and you're in the C-suite and you're putting up the
Bottom
numbers,
line, stay bottom line. Yeah.
if you're putting up the numbers and you're meeting the quarterly earnings and annual and things are financially working out, you can kind of get away with it. But in a nonprofit leadership context, you have to have authenticity, which means, you don't have to have a lot of razzle dazzle. You just have to be genuine in your passion for the purpose and the mission of that. And it's got to come out in you. And I have had the, privilege of being asked to, lead and get more involved in leadership of other nonprofits, which I was happy to donate to and maybe serve on the board for that. But I really didn't feel the passion to lead the entire institution. And I didn't think that it was right to have somebody like me who wasn't who's, heart and soul wasn't completely in it. So that's number one. I think another thing is that, you need to engage the trustees on consequential issues. The nonprofit board meeting model of which I grew up in and I had led many years at various other organizations, I felt was could be improved upon. And so at the Illinois Institute of Technology, Illinois Tech, I reached out to Bill Ryan, who co-wrote the book Governance as Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School, who had originated with Dick Chaitin and his other co-author ways in which large boards could be mobilized to do extraordinarily good work, even better work than smaller committees, as is the conventional wisdom. So anyway, I could talk more about that, but I won't. But unless you want to. But number one, you've got to be authentic. Number two, you have to find ways to engage the trustees on consequential issues. I always make sure that every board meeting, everybody that attends gets some form of take-home value, that they learn something that they can take back to their other nonprofits or for-profit businesses or their home or somebody, whether it's from a faculty member, a student, an outside speaker resource. Because when that meeting comes up on your calendar and you're looking at it, you don't want to be, your trustees looking for an excuse not to have to attend because they're just going to, be sitting through another meeting. But they're going to want to be there because they know they're going to get some take-home value and to make it fun. We always had fun. We had a sense of humor. We were self-effacing. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. We were a no politics zone. We didn't allow any politics, a lot of transparency. And so I think, these are some of the things that I think help motivate a board. If they know that they're going to be engaged and they know they're going to get something out of it and they know they're going to have fun.
I also think sharing responsibility and asking people to do real things, like really get engaged at a level where you're going to you're going to help us set a new policy. You're going to solve a problem. You're going to lead a capital campaign, whatever the task may be. I think you made a lot of those points already, but I think that is real engagement. By the way, I want to remind everyone that we have a Q&A function down here. We're starting to get some good questions, and I'm going to integrate the first couple into the conversation we're about to have. But there is a good one here about what does the board member, Mike, get out of being on a board? I mean, you're a good guy, and everyone who volunteers are good people, to contribute to the mission and advance it, and maybe give money and time and all that stuff. But what do you get out of it?
What do I personally?
Yeah. What's in it for you?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that, the same thing that everybody gets out of the nonprofits about which they're passionate, which is like, you're really, doing good by doing well. And I just think that, you just feel so good about yourself when you, together with a team, it's not all about me, like I say, can make some of these legacy contributions and breakthroughs and try new things and do things differently. It just makes, your life more meaningful. And what we're trying to do on this issue of motivation is to make sure that the other trustees are
Exactly.
getting the same thing out of it as well.
Exactly.
So it's a shared experience, not all about me. And that's why it's so important to move from this model of governance away from where everybody gets a board book with memos on finance and advancement and nominations to the board and this, that, and the other thing. And then they come to the board meeting and each committee chair basically orally summarizes what they've already read. And then after they get done with that, after 45 minutes to an hour, then everybody sits around and waits for a very small clique of trustees to present to them some policy or some strategy, which they are expected to essentially ratify and donate to. And it's astonishing to me that like any of us ever stayed on those boards. Just give me a call and I'll write the check and don't subject me to the mind-numbing.
Right. It's like doing the non-event event. Spare me the rubber chicken. Just ask me for the money and I'll send you a check.
But at the board meetings that we're running now at Illinois Tech with 63, I think, different, trustees, what we're doing is we're expecting everybody's going to do their homework and read their committee reports. If they have a question, they can raise it or they can do it offline, to the president, the chair, the committee chair, or whatever, and move immediately into what we call generative discussion, which is where we tee up an issue, brief it, in 2 to 4 pages, and get everybody thinking about that issue and treating them just like the way that they're treated at their own businesses, where when a meeting is called, they know what the issue is, they have the background information, and they're expected to come and be listened to in terms of what their ideas or the questions are that should be asked or the suggestions that should be made. And so we're really ending up with much better work product, if you will, on strategy, on policy, on branding, on cross-pollination between different departments and degrees and that kind of stuff, because we're getting these very serious, very experienced men and women who have a lot to contribute but have never been asked. And so I get a lot of personal satisfaction from seeing people actually being able to contribute. But I know from them that they are feeling better about their involvement because they're having an impact.
Exactly.
And, there's this conventional wisdom that, an elephant is a mouse designed by committee. In other words, it's to make the point, the metaphor that like you should never have a large board, never have a large committee that tries to come up with like really imaginative things. Wrong. We've turned that totally upside down on its head at Illinois Tech. We get up front ahead of the strategic plan and ask our board, what are the questions we should be asking? When you do a strategic plan, what are the things, how do you, process on this? And what are some of the, your own, ideas with regard to the institution? And then all of that great input from 60 different people is taken back into a committee of a smaller group, and they make the sausage and then bring it back to the larger group, and the larger group can all see the questions addressed, the impact, evident in the quality. And we're getting much better policy out of our senior executives because, their bandwidth is extraordinary, but it's also limited. And we have all these CEOs and vice presidents of various, businesses, for-profit, nonprofit, and they think of things that the small group can't think of.
Yeah, so Mike, I'm reminded, I've been the CEO of 5 nonprofit organizations, and I know how tricky and delicate it is to be the leader, and being lockstep with the chair, as you're describing, is critical. But
yeah,
motivating the board in all the ways you're talking about, and in a very talented way, sort of guiding that discussion, through a board meeting and through committee meetings and stuff to keep people fully engaged, really, really important. So that leads me to, I know you've been in situations where you are not happy, perhaps, with the participation from certain board members. This is something all board chairs and all CEOs should be thinking about all the time, if you ask me. And so the question comes down to, what do you do with dead weight on the board? What are your tactics in that category? And then I want to link the other question I have for you. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you've said, I'm going to boot myself off the board because I'm not doing what I thought, or this isn't what I thought, and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, wow. Good questions.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Well, first of all, I want to make one more thing about, people feeling good about themselves and their work. Oftentimes, this just came to mind that, these boards, they spend so much time on matters of high finance and big donations and hiring and, senior executives, or, the new executive director or whatever, that they lose sight of the product. And so, at Illinois Tech and everywhere we go, we're all, Vail Veterans, the other things I'm involved in, we're always, quote, showing the, quote, product. In other words, getting students and faculty at, from the university in the presence so that the trustees can see evidence of the extraordinary. We did the same thing at NCS, where if you're a new board member every year, I think, or every other year, we required all board members to spend a morning attending classes, just seeing the girls and the students at work. I mean, you come out of there so pumped up. So don't just isolate yourself as trustees, get into the community and see all your good work at work. So, trustees, it's all about managing expectations. And the most important part of managing expectations is kind of up front, going in, so that everybody knows what they're getting themselves into. And so, the first thing is that you should not be recruiting people, to your board that don't genuinely identify with the shared interest and seriousness of purpose of that event. I mean, I've seen numbers of occasions where they can say, gosh, if we could get this sports star, or we could get this, extraordinarily wealthy person or somebody with a big profile on our board. But if they don't really identify, it's going to be worse than better, because
dead weight, it's a problem.
They don't put out, and it adversely affects morale. And so, and then if you do have somebody that genuinely, identifies, make sure that they understand, going in, what the expectation is. I mean, if you join our university board, you are basically saying that this will be a priority in your philanthropy, whether you're a small major donor or a large major donor. We have some on our board that obviously can, hardly afford the, the parking to come to our meetings, and obviously the expectations for them, because they bring an expertise that's or a representation of a constituency that's so important to us. That's fine, but that's an expectation that's managed. We don't want to put that person under any undue stress, but ones that for which there is a hope for, we make it very clear. If you're joining our board, you're telling us that we will be a priority, maybe not the tippy top priority, but a priority. And then once you get them on the board, to make sure that you're really evaluating them on an annual basis. Are they measuring up? Are they attending committee meetings? Are they contributing to the generative discussion? And are they, making annual donations at the levels at which their segment of financial capacity is expected? And if they're not, then, they need to be, this needs to be an open, civil, transparent discussion. And oftentimes those trustees self-select at the end of the day when they know that, we talked about it last year, we need you to attend more, we need you to give more, we need you to, step up and do this or that, or introduce us to whomever. And at the end of it, you just down and say, whoever you are, remember we talked about this before. This is what, we all agreed you to include it was expected. And, it just doesn't appear as if it's either a time or priority. So why don't we just declare victory and move on altogether? Or if it's somebody who's been on the board for a long time and just doesn't have the energy or the capacity or whatever, we'll honor them with emeritus status and, that kind of stuff.
You'd be surprised how difficult it is for most boards and most staff leadership to actually, go through that process. But I have to say, you mentioned something there that I think is so vitally important. And for those on this webinar who have listened into our previous ones, you've heard me say this many times, but I'm going to highlight it because Mike just said how important it is too. Having annual reviews with board members, setting expectations, reviewing what happened in the previous year, setting expectations for what we're going to work on together this coming year, and then holding them, their feet to the fire through the course of the year, and then at the end, reviewing. I think that is a brilliant process that I know works because I've done it several times. And it does bring you to a natural conclusion, Mike, just as you said, where it becomes very obvious that I don't have the time to do this, or whatever, I can't do what you're asking me to do. But, that brings me to another important point, Mike, about staff leadership. And this is my last point on board stuff before we get to fundraising, because I know a lot of people want to hear your views on fundraising. How important is it, and how do you like to be sort of handled from a staff level, and to do things like fundraising, to do things like, the leadership properly, to have the right agendas written, all that stuff? How important is it to be staffed properly?
Well, I think it's very important. I know Alan Cram, and I was the president.
I hope Alan's listening today. He's getting a lot of great PR.
Well, but this is the same. This is. And everywhere where I've had, the privilege of leading a board, I mean, it's really important with the head of the board. For us, it was Aggie Underwood at, the National Cathedral Girls. And, she was a legendary leader that I learned a lot from, just as I'm learning from Alan. And, yeah, I mean, you've got to have somebody who really is serious about, the board meetings and the trustee interaction, and has the staff infrastructure behind or the time themselves, like Cheryl and Cheryl Jensen and Vail Veterans Program, and it's just a smaller organization, to really, connect with the trustees and deliver on the expectations that I set out before in terms of having meetings in which we engage on substantive, topics, on consequential issues where the trustees are having an impact and they're learning something, take home value, and having fun. And we work a lot, to make sure that, those kinds of meetings and interactions are we deliver on that. So we work really hard together. So, it's important that the meetings be taken seriously and not just like, let's try to just get through this, by reciting things to them, asking for the ratification and donating. That's just.
Mike, what I encounter every day are board members who say, well, I was recruited to this board and there are a number of expectations and they were well delineated. But then, I sort of arrive at the next meeting and they say, okay, did you do all that stuff? And it's like, well, my experience is there needs to be heavy staff engagement to properly employ and bring out the best in a strong leader.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. You have to have a strong senior executive team, whether you're $1 million nonprofit or you're $100 million nonprofit. you have to have somebody that is going to staff those functions. I mean, that's what they're paid to do full time, you know, among other things. But I think it's really, really important. And you have to have A players. You have to make sure that you got a president or an executive director who has the risk-taking self-confidence to attract and retain A players in the executive positions, quote, you know, below or on the team, to whom these, you know, some of these things are delegated. Because if you have a B or a C player, then one of the other A players is going to have to pick up that slack, and then that creates, you know, adverse morale in the cultural and leadership culture of the whole thing. So we have, everywhere I've gone, I really tried to, you know, encourage the CEO to settle for nothing less than A players in every position. And you know the ones that we had at NCS that Aggie attracted, which were amazing. And we've got the strongest leadership team we've ever had at Illinois Tech. And I'd like to be able to take credit for that, but I don't, because it was all the CEOs or the head of schools, not the board chair. I just gave them the support and the political cover to transition people out if, you know, it wasn't working out for them and us, and to get the stronger players in.
So thank you for that. Let's move to fundraising. I'm getting a bunch of really good questions, and I know there's a lot of interest in, you know, your views on fundraising. And by the way, I want to warn everybody that we technically have, you know, 15 minutes or so left. We may go over on this one because, Mike, you are so interesting. And Mike, when you have to leave, just yell at me. But I won't take you too much beyond an hour. COVID and the, you know, social unrest that perhaps as a result of that, or perhaps is related to a number of things. I don't want to dig any deeper into that, but we clearly are in unprecedented times, and its impact on nonprofits, you know, is dramatic. So simple thing, not so simple, but I mean, obvious things like events, you know, just can't happen right now. And there are a number of strategies that, you know, we talk about all the time, and every person on this call thinks about all the time, because it's, you know, an enormously powerful source of unrestricted funds typically. But also another topic related to COVID, which has been very successful, are special funds. You know, relating it to COVID, immediate solutions. We need your help. I'm involved with several of our partners who've been very, very successful at that. Do you have suggestions or experiences specifically on that, on those things?
Yes. I do have some. First of all, my heart goes out to anybody that had the virus and may have lost somebody to the virus. Very serious thing. And I think the important thing is that let's just not forget that the value proposition of our underlying nonprofits cannot contract coronavirus or Ebola, or, you know, be shot down by an airplane flying into an office building. If you have a legitimate purpose to your underlying nonprofit, it's still worthy of your time and your treasure, including that of your broader donors who are not perhaps involved as much as you are day to day. So that's number one. You know, number two, from a limited standpoint, because obviously everybody's fingers have been singed financially. Yes, the stock market's back up, but who knows what's going to be tomorrow, and where this virus is going to go, and what kind of impact the economy's, you know, going to have trying to come back from this shutdown. Sure. You know, so, you know, you can't be, you know, too aggressive, but this is an opportunity to, like you said, selectively, create fundraising opportunities which, you know, exemplify and remind your donors of the continuing relevance of your underlying purpose and the need to continue to support. Now, some of those more limited things are, like, for example, at Illinois Tech, where we have over 30%, you know, Pell Grant students who are very financially challenged. We're proud of the fact that in our history, over 100 years, we're ranked #1 in the region in terms of getting, you know, elevating students from families in the bottom 20% to the top 20% of economic participation 5, 10, 20 years down the road. But, you know, while they're at our university, they're not going, home to Greenwich or Lake Forest, Illinois, or whatever, to the, creature comforts of a privileged environment like that. So we created the Hawks for Hawks, fund, which gave, financial support to certain extra financial support that we weren't already giving, to those particular, underrepresented, financially challenged students. And that's been very popular. Another institution I'm just on the board of is the Eagle Vale Behavioral Health. That's where they're tackling, the behavioral health issues that are rampant everywhere, but really doing some award-winning leadership work in our community. They created Lawrence Fund, where if you're shuttered with your family, not in a sprawling home in the suburbs, but, an apartment or a small home, and you've got the kids there and the wife's trying to homeschool while she's trying to work, and you're, or the husband or the wife is drinking too much or abusing each other, we would provide half a dozen free Zoom sessions with a real, licensed therapist to help you, get help, to help yourself and your family. And in Vail Veterans, I think, very imaginative. What Cheryl Jensen has done is not just send out a notice like I've gotten so many from the other nonprofits of which I'm not on the board, but just a contributor, announcing the sadness that we're going to have to stop and we're not going to go forward with an event, and in the alternative, show how agilely our organization has renewed and reconfigured itself in the time of pandemic shutdown to provide all sorts of other services aligned with our mission to our alumni and our constituencies. So there's all sorts of opportunities there. And I'll just conclude by saying, don't give up on the longer term campaign financing either. I mean, it may not be the right time to initiate a brand new ask, but if you had ones in the pipeline, continue to follow up on that. Or if you don't think it's appropriate, use this as an opportunity just to reach out to people like I'm doing, I know Alan is, to just, say, how are you doing? Because people are open-minded to, whereas they wouldn't have taken an in-person meeting before because they had their gatekeeper, but now they're kind of looking for somebody to talk to during this, pandemic.
So true.
And so, there's lots of good cultivation that can go on. And don't forget, a lot of people have conventionally just stopped fundraising altogether. That lessens the competition. So,
Spoken like
selectively be on the program and don't feel like you're doing your organization, your nonprofit a service by backing off.
That is the advice we've been giving, starting with keep communicating, keep the channels open. People want to talk. People are eager to talk. And yeah, sure, be sensitive and don't, hit them over the head for a big gift, at the beginning of this last 10 weeks. But, now we're sort of coming to a point where, we need help. And they're our good friends and we've been talking to them a lot. And it's only natural that it moves into, how can I help kind of conversation. It's natural. So Mike, here's another area. So I know you get invited to boards, you're on a lot of boards, but you probably get invited to a lot that you don't participate in. And that might be, they want your network, they want big gifts from you, whatever, you can add a lot of value to their mission. But what's your advice, for those who are recruiting you as to how specific they should be, in making it real as to what they really want you for, as opposed to just, oh, Mike, you're a great guy and, we'd love to have you on the board. I mean, what's been your experience with that and what's your advice?
Well, I think always, especially in a nonprofit, leadership situation, the transparency is your friend. And you really shouldn't tiptoe around, what the expectations are. I mean, you don't have to get, a number in terms of, if you're asking somebody to join the board, which has financial capacity, that they have given major gifts in the past, you don't have to say, well, if you've got to commit to, making $1 million gift or something like that. You just have to get the commitment that we all understand that this is going to be a priority, and what that generally means for you in the context of your other small number of top priorities. So you got to get the expectations and be, realistic. The biggest mistakes I see in recruiting people and hopefully tapping into their networks is it realistic that this person, feels the passion for the mission and is going to, help us get access to that network? And so the more you can talk about that and as an expectation is like, look, this is what we really need and hope that you would feel comfortable doing. And don't hope for the best. I see a lot of situations where you say, wow, if we could get this person on our board, hopefully maybe they'll, kind of catch the sizzle of it all and donate. No, I mean, again, you can't ask for the number up front, but you just have to know that they're on the program. And the ones that don't work, again, they corrode the culture.
Do you appreciate when there is a minimum give and get requirement that the board asks of you and makes clear before you get on the board?
Yes, I think that like annual giving. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a place to start. Is that we have this thing, give or get, this amount of money sized to the institution that's kind of market related. We look at what other similarly situated institutions are doing, and we look at a kind of the configuration of the financial capacity of our board and size appropriately, and offer to help them. If they have to get part of that, what can we do to help connect you? And
that goes back to the staffing issue.
It goes back to the staffing issue.
Yeah.
That people have to be helpful to make everybody on the board a success in this regard. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that everybody has to know going in, that this is what we expect for you, for at least for annual giving. And that
if I've learned, Mike, one thing in my old age and the 30 years I've had in this business, it is that I'm always on the staff side or on the staff side, working with the likes of you, board members. I know that we have got to enable you to do your best. Enable and do most of the work, frankly. Your high value to us is who and networks and such. And that brings me actually to a networking question. Are you comfortable, if you're really into the mission and such, hitting up your friends, as it were, in a crude way or tapping your friendships and your business relationships to bring money into charitable organizations? And do you find other board members are generally comfortable with that?
Yeah, no, I think that is, a minimum expectation, that if you're joining the board and you've had the success in life to have a network of even, people with the financial capacity to give, that sure, you have to be willing and not ashamed, to introduce. And again, if you have the authenticity and the identification with the purpose of the organization, most of us that have had the privilege of excelling somewhat in business like to sell because we like to sell what we believe in, and
exactly.
This is something that we believe in. That said, I think you have to be realistic. You really have to be realistic, and you need to say, look, my network is just not that interested. They're not going to be that interested. But I will, if I can identify a number of people to introduce to the institution, try to get them excited about it, get them involved, maybe even get them on the board, active in committees, that kind of stuff. It's all about cultivation. In political fundraising, which I've done, I was the Illinois finance chair for George H. Walker Bush 41, back when Illinois, and I was living in Chicago, and Illinois and California were the two most important swing states. That is much more of a network sale, or ask, if you will. But when it comes to the heart and soul of a nonprofit organization, sure, you try to reach out to your network, but if it really isn't their thing, you're not doing the organization any good by plowing in a lot of people in your network who put their name on stuff, don't attend, don't contribute their time and their treasure.
Mike, on a topic I know people are interested in because I deal with it every day. If you are in the middle of a capital campaign, or if you've been thinking of starting one, or you know, wherever stage you are, and most nonprofits are, you know, doing some form of a campaign, is this the time to stop the campaign or to halt, or should you be doing the things that we just talked about, which is keep the relationships warm and, you know, sort of tomorrow will be a better day and we're going to move forward on this and so forth and so on. There is a knee-jerk reaction in the nonprofit community, say, oh my gosh, you know, we've got to stop all activities. And I don't think that's the right attitude, but what say you?
I say that you never stop as long as your, you know, value proposition is relevant. And like I said before, you know, the value propositions of the causes we're all a part of, you know, they can't get COVID virus, you know, they're not going away because of COVID virus. They're ever more in need now than they were before. So this is the time to stay connected with your donors. You don't have to be calling them up, you know, asking and pressing for, you know, for money, but just to call them up, to keep them updated on what's going on, reminding them of the relevance of the purpose and the mission of the institution, how much other gifts that they've given to the institution are continuing to, you know, result in making a difference for the constituencies that are the recipients of those, whether they be scholarships or faculty chairs and, you know, things of that nature. And this is the time to dial up your connection, your interpersonal connection, because everybody wants to tell their story as to how they're dealing with COVID and their business and their personal life, and what they want to listen to what you're doing. And, you know, it just, and it's a good opportunity for a teaching moment to remind them of the purpose. And then I think with regard to the campaign, you just have to be flexible. You know, if you were going to go out in a campaign in the springtime of this year, I would say better to wait till fall or spring of next year. But that doesn't mean you should stop calling and connecting with your donors. And in a couple of instances, we found by staying in touch with certain of our donors, they've said, you know something, I was only thinking about giving a gift of this much, but in this environment, and I see that you're having to, you know, downsize and right size, you know, in connection and go online, you know, and it's having financial implications on the institutions. We're in a very strong, you know, financial position, and we have lots of liquidity. You know, that's another thing. Nonprofits should manage their liquidity and not get too addicted to debt. And so, yeah, I mean, they'd say, you know something, we're going to give you more because we've got the capacity and we understand that, you know, you've been hit with something that was not your fault, and we want to really try to be helpful. So never let up in making connections and cultivating with your donor constituencies.
So in the interest of time, Mike, and by the way, for those who have to drop, I'm getting a couple of messages. Yes, this will be on the Orr Group website. There'll be a recording, as there always are. And Mike's stunningly intelligent face and views will be presented there. But just a couple more issues, Mike, and then we'll let everybody go. There are a lot of questions always about, you know, we've been an event fundraising organization and we've been over reliant on this for years and years. And we've always wanted to make the switch. You know, what do we do now? We have to do something. And I'm going to answer the question by saying, yes, you do. And this would be the ideal time to step sideways just for a minute and take a look at where your funding is coming from, how heavily reliant you are on these events. You know, I don't think we're going to be doing the same type of events anytime soon that we have been. We thought initially it was just the spring, and now it's clearly the summer, and now most people are thinking in the fall. You know, it's very risky to be planning too heavily on a big event. Smaller events, yes. So, you know, what do you do? And to me, it is a logical time to be strategic, to step sideways for a minute and look at where you're not raising dollars and what you could be doing, and, you know, restructuring the development department in a bit to where you could go out. And there's methodology, proven methodology as to how you do that. And I won't bore you with those details right now, but please, contact Mike or me. I'm sure Mike knows how to do it. But this is, our business, and I really think it's an important time for that. So I'm going to move on from that, Mike. So I want to ask you a question. How many boards are too many for anybody? Is there an answer to that or not?
Well, I think it really has to do with how much, again, how genuine is your, your connected, to the passion and the mission of the organization. I mean, you could have all the time in the world, but if it doesn't kind of ring your bell and you're looking for other things to do, or you're just not, it's not interesting, to spend time on it, you shouldn't be involved. So you have to be self-assess your willingness to make a sacrifice of valuable time to an organization. Then the second time question is relative to all the other things you've got to do in connection with your professional life. If you're in for-profit business or a lawyer or a doctor or something, how much time can you realistically spend? Because you don't want to assume a board position, a committee position, or, the lead board chair position if you realistically cannot, spend that time. And so it all depends on, you got to kind of add all that stuff up together and figure out, what you can handle. As I said before, I would never have stepped up to the chair of a university board if I hadn't kind of freed up, if you will, about 30% of my time, 25 to 30% of my time, from my other for-profit, activities. So I think it's just a personal decision, but you don't want to be on too many. You want to be on just enough that you realistically have the time to fulfill the service and feel good about it, as opposed to feeling bad about the fact that that you're not showing up for meetings, you're not donating at the level that they probably expect you to, and you're just that person that's contributing to the corrosive aspects of hurting morale.
Yeah, I can tell you with certainty that the worst thing that can happen from a staffing level is to have a board member, who's on paper fantastic and just could be so good for the organization, but just not enough time, just not enough commitment. The missions aren't aligned, as you've said so many times. It's a really difficult thing to deal with, when you're trying to run a charity and move it forward. Okay, with that, Mike, I want to put you on the spot with one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Will, if you could send one message out to this community, the nonprofit community, maybe it relates to where we are at this moment, or maybe it's just a general philosophical perspective that you have. What would that one message be?
I think, this whole concept of, working with the president and senior executives and the rest of the trustees or board members to see where you can meaningfully make that legacy contribution that future boards will be able to build, that will never go away, and future boards will be able to build upon. And if that is your compass, then that will lead you as an ordinary board to do extraordinary things together. And I think that's really what we're all trying to do, is to kind of take these boards to the next level. And so this whole thing that we started with, which, I was, privileged to be a part of with my mom and dad, this dedication to continuous renewal and improvement, a compass that's orienting you to making legacy contributions. I think if that's where your heart and soul and your vision is, you're going to find your way to do something that you can look back upon and feel really proud of.
That's great. Mike, I wish there were so many more like you. And there are a lot of unbelievable people out there who give of their time and their treasure and, are as committed and thoughtful as you are. So thank you for doing what you're doing for our community. And thank you for being with us today. My final word, I guess, to our folks would be, go to the webinar on the website if you wish. But in these times, be thoughtful, be sensitive, be smart, do what you can to improve your own environment internally and make a difference in the world, because the world needs it right now. So we're in a moment. So I want to thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time. Mike, thanks so much again.
Okay, thank you very much, all. You're very nice to include me. I really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thank you.